fans. So it's been a little while since UFC 284 this past Saturday. So, we had time to really break it down. We had time to let it like simmer. We had a lot of time to let it marinate. So now I want to know a few questions for you guys. My first question is regarding Volkanovski and Islam. This is what this whole video is going to be based about. So let's go first topic is who is the pound for pound number one fighter? Well, my opinion is it is a tie. It is a tie. It's not because I'm biased, because I do like Volkanovski and I do like Islam Makhachev as well. I do believe they're both great fighters. I do believe that they are both the pound for pound number one fighter. But if we look at the fighting, if we look at that match, who did more to win and who did more to excuse me, strike that. Who did enough to just win the fight and who did more to actually really win the fight? Like basically, we look at Volkanovski, it seemed like he did a lot more to actually win, where Islam did enough, just barely enough to win, but not really defeat Volkanovski, if you get what I'm saying. That's just where I'm at. I know there's a lot of technicality. I know a lot of people are saying, well, no, it's like he won the fight fair and square. That was it. That's it. He should be number one pound for pound. And I agree. He should be. But if we look at that fight, did he really beat Volkanovski? Not really. He won the fight, but he did not beat him. He was in there for a good couple of rounds. I would say like around 1 and 2, he showed us what he was able to do. He wasn't really dominating Volkanovski to any degree whatsoever. He was showing some really good skills, really good high-level skills that he had with some of his striking and grappling. Of course, like we knew what was going to happen. But at the end of the day, Volkanovski was still very much in that fight in round 3, where he was able to take over a little bit, and especially in round 5, where he just completely dominated Islam Makhachev. Regardless of whether what happened before the fight, doesn't matter. In the fight, he pretty much was able to dominate. He was a fresher fighter. He was a stronger fighter going into the later rounds. Islam looked like he was struggling. Islam looked like he was very tired. And in that 4th round, it just really bothers me, because in that 4th round, we see Islam winning by technicality, not by he defeated, not by beating Volkanovski. It was mostly by technicality, because he had more ground control. Like, he had the ability to put a submission on him. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, well, Volkanovski could have been able to get out of that submission, or that the grappling attempt that Islam had on him. He had his ability to do that, sure, but at the same time, Islam did have him, and he pretty much had his legs wrapped around him, and he could have got a submission on him as well. But at the end of the day, nobody really did anything. The only person that did anything was really Volkanovski, even though it was meaningless what he did, but he just seemed like he was a little bit more active than Islam, Sure, did Islam have the most dominating position? Yes, but what did he really do with it? There was very little, it looked like Volkanovski was in little to no danger whatsoever. In hindsight, could he be in danger? Sure, absolutely. But at the end of the day, he really wasn't. It just didn't seem like it. It didn't seem like, there was any attempt to where he was able to get a submission on him. That was good defense from Volkanovski, and it just at the end of the day, the round was mostly just him holding him there, hoping to get a submission, but didn't get nothing, where Volkanovski was just pretty much doing the majority of the action, hitting him behind the head, hitting him not behind the head, but behind his own head, hitting him and such like that. But that was still, still nothing. And it just, to me, that was what technically won the round for Islam. It wasn't because Islam ground and pounded him. It wasn't because Islam did like a Brian Ortega and had Volkanovski in a very tight submission that he almost had him tapping out in. It just pretty much because he had his legs wrapped around him and had his back for a good long period of time. And that to me isn't really a pound for pound fighting attempt. And then of course in round 5, he didn't do anything but get knocked down and got some ground and pound on him. That's pretty much what, as far as I see for Islam. Volkanovski, you got to remember, Volkanovski was the featherweight champion of the world. Volkanovski had maybe a couple of fights in his earlier days at lightweight and middleweight and such like that, where I believe he actually had his first loss. I'm not sure if it was at middleweight or welterweight, one or the other. But still, his higher level opposition was always at featherweight. He is a naturally featherweight guy, even though he has one time been at 200 pounds and does cut a lot of weight sometimes. I do believe he walks around 165, 170, give or take. Excuse me. But with that being said, it's just that Volkanovski was the one that's going up to his weight class. Volkanovski was going up to the lightweight weight class. Volkanovski was the one that was giving up 4 or 5 inches in height. Volkanovski was giving up the more of a weight disadvantage on him because Islam comes in much more heavier than his. Pretty much Volkanovski went in there with all odds against him. You know, Volkanovski was supposed to go in there and supposed to get defeated very handily, according to a lot of MMA outlets. You know, a lot of people had Islam Makhachev defeating Volkanovski like the way he got defeated by Bobby, like the way Islam defeated Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, and Charles Oliveira. But it did not happen. So that's why we see Volkanovski pretty much was very much into the fight. He finished very strong in that fight. You know, it really bothers me that Islam was able to get that defeat by, you know, that fourth round, because up until that fourth round, it was very crystal clear that this fight was very even, and it was actually going back and forth. And especially in that fifth round, you know, Volkanovski was in total control and was ready to go another few more rounds. But of course, we're not basing on that by that kind of point status. We're basically based on your regular 5 rounds, you know, 5 minutes a round and such like that, so forth. But still, it really leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, like that. And did Islam do as good as we thought he was going to do? Did he do good? Yes, absolutely. But it just showed, like, you know, Volkanovski was the rightfully pound for pound number one fighter. Should he lose that spot? No, he shouldn't, because he actually did everything to actually win the fight, but he did not win the actual fight. You know, Islam did everything to win the fight, but did not beat Volkanovski. This is basically what I'm trying to say. You know, Volkanovski did everything to win the fight, but he did not beat Islam Makhachev. You know, he did everything he could do, but just with all the odds stacked against Volkanovski, you know, that's what it pretty much narrows down to. So in my opinion, when it comes to number one pound for pound fighter, I do believe that Volkanovski and Islam should definitely share that title. They definitely should, and they should run it back. I do believe it would be a different fight. I do believe it would be a different outcome, both going both ways, 100%, because these guys are so evenly matched. It is one hell of a fight. It was definitely one hell of a fight. I enjoyed it very much. I definitely recommend you guys go watch it for sure. So, guys, check it out. Please definitely go check out that fight. That's my first topic on regarding that goes. Now, as far as Islam Makhachev, how do you guys think he would do at welterweight? Because we've seen a little bit of a struggle with him and Volkanovski. You know, we've seen that, and it really made me wonder, like, damn, you know, Volkanovski, he is a natural featherweight, and he went up to lightweight, and he does have some size on him, and he has some strength on him. But imagine if Islam went up to welterweight and went up against guys who are walking around 200 pounds, cutting down to 170, and guys like, look at the size of Kamaru Usman. Look at the size of Leon Edwards. Look at the size of Kobe Covington. Look at the size of Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, what would they do to a guy like Islam Makhachev? I do believe Islam could hold his own. I do believe Islam is able to defeat multiple guys at welterweight. But against the higher elite guys, I honestly, truly do not feel that it would be a very good matchup for Islam Makhachev. Maybe down the line, I could be wrong. I'm not saying 100% no. It's a totally 100% no. Don't even try it. It could be. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he would actually do a lot better with the rehydration. Maybe he would do a lot better with walking around his natural weight, because he did walk into the fight night around 180-ish. So you never know. Maybe he walks around at 190 or bigger. But from what I've seen due to that Volkanovski fight, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, if he were to try to attempt to go a double champ and fight guys with the size who are walking around at 5'10", 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", and walking around, like, when they rehydrate, they're rehydrating to 200 pounds, maybe 190 at the most. I'm talking about guys like the top echelon guys, you know, and it's like you look at Khamzat Chimaev and such. I really do not see that being a very good fight for Islam. Islam is definitely going to go in there a much more smaller opponent compared to the rest of the welterweight. So I don't highly recommend it. As far as him at lightweight goes, I do see him holding that title, that strap, for a very long time. You know, because some of the guys out there like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, who are very good on their hands and have some really good techniques on the ground. But I do believe Islam is just that total package when it comes to being able to hold his own on the ground and definitely in his hands. You know, I definitely would like to see him being a little bit more tested as far as on the hands go. with a bigger opponent and guys who are around his size, that would definitely be fun. Like seeing him against a Justin Gaethje or Dustin Poirier, that would be one hell of a fun fight because both those guys have really good wrestling, really good grappling. But unfortunately, due to the fact that we've seen these guys already get submitted and tapped out by guys like Habib Nurmagomedov and Charles Oliveira, it just makes you like, not 100% sure how well they will do against Islam. So I do feel like Islam's rightful weight class is the lightweight class, and I do feel like he is going to stay in that weight class for quite some time. That's just my personal opinion. As far as Volkanovski goes, when it comes to moving up in weight, I do feel like him at lightweight would actually be very fun. I don't feel like there's a whole lot left for him to do at featherweight. I mentioned this before. He is going to be the GOAT. He is going to be hands down the greatest of all time when it comes to the featherweight weight class. That's just bottom line. I'm talking about guys like Jose Aldo, Max Holloway. It don't matter. He is by far the GOAT. He is the 100% best 145-pound featherweight champion of all time. And as far as him moving up in class, it would be very fun to see. I would love to see a strike fest with him against Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, and especially Michael Chandler. I do feel like there would be so much more fun matchups for him. I do feel like if he took the time like he did against like John Jones, I do, like, when John Jones took the time off to become a natural heavyweight opponent, I do feel like Volkanovski could really pack on that weight, pack on that muscle mass. He will still always be at a disadvantage due to his height and due to his frame, but I think that's also going to be a good advantage for him because like we've seen with guys like Brian Ortega and even Volkanovski, it is so hard to put a submission on somebody that really has no neck, that has really small limbs. When you try to put an armbar on him, when you try to put a triangle on him, when you try to pull a guillotine on him, it is just so hard because he is just so small and compact that it's hard to wrap yourself around him and get a really good submission on him, especially when the rest of the division has long arms and they have just so much to wrap around. And Volkanovski has long arms himself, so that would just be a very fun matchup. I see a very fun action matchup because Volkanovski is one hell of a striker himself. We've seen what he was able to do to guys like Max Holloway, and who is by far probably the best boxer in all of UFC today, if you really ask most experts in the MMA community. So that's just my personal opinion when it comes to these guys moving up in weight. Now, I've been hearing some things regarding Islam Makhachev, how his performance wasn't all that great because of the fact that he had a really bad weight cut. Guys, let's just face the facts that, Volkanovski, the reason why Islam did not look like the way he's supposed to look when it came to like basically how he looked against Charles Oliveira, how he looked against Bobby Green, how he looked against Dan Hooker, and how he looked against some of the rest of the weight class in his lightweight division is no due to the fact that because of his weight cut. Of course, maybe he did have a bad weight cut, but at the end of the day, he was still at a higher advantage. He was still the taller opponent. He was still the bigger opponent. He still was the opponent that had more pounds on him, regardless of whether the fact Volkanovski was at. Regardless, it was still at lightweight. Still, that doesn't matter. The guy was always weighing at 145. He didn't have that large proper time. I'm talking about that John Jones time to get that muscle mass on, to get the proper weight on, to get comfortable in his own weight as well. So Volkanovski went in there an underdog as well. He didn't go in there the bigger opponent. He didn't go in there the taller opponent. He didn't go in there with the opponent that had much history in the lightweight division. He didn't go in there facing guys who are just as big as he is, as like Makhachev was. He didn't go in there getting hit or being used to getting hitting other opponents that size at that weight. Makhachev did. So when I hear things like that, it really does bother me because it's almost trying to take away from the fact that Volkanovski really made Islam Makhachev look human for so long. There's just been this just like, oh my God, he's going to be the greatest of all time. He's going to be the greatest of all time. And there's no stopping that. Maybe he will be. I'm talking about Islam. Maybe he will be. But he just looked really human in this fight. He really did. And, there's a lot of other MMA outlets out there that are trying to defend the fact that, oh, no, he would totally dominate Volkanovski if they had a rematch and if he had a better weight cut. You can't really go always based on that. You can't always base your performance by that. Oh, if I had a better weight cut, because there's always something. There's always a woulda, coulda, shoulda in your own camp. Maybe if you trained at this more, you would have done better. Maybe if you would have ate this a little more, you would have done better. Maybe if you ate this less, if you would have done better. Maybe if you start cutting weight at this time, you would have done better. That doesn't just mean for Islam. Maybe there was something wrong with Volkanovski too. Maybe Volkanovski went in there and he didn't train the certain way that he should have trained. Maybe he didn't train to stand up. He even said it himself. He underestimated Islam's boxing technique. But if he went in there and didn't underestimate Islam's boxing technique, maybe it would have been different. So you can't really say that. You can't really base your whole argument around that because the way he looked. I've seen some MMA outlets talking about how, oh, well, look at the picture side by side. And it's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. The guy went in there. He did his boot camp. He knew what he was supposed to do. He is a grown adult. He is a grown man. He's been in the MMA. This isn't his first rodeo. This isn't his first fight he's ever had. He's been in this a very long time. He's been training with guys like Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's been training with the AKA community for a very long time, so he knows what's up. He knows what happened. And then I hear about this whole thing while they didn't let him rehydrate fast enough. It doesn't matter because there's other places that you can use that same argument. Like when you went to Abu Dhabi, these guys are fighting at a certain time of day. Just like in Australia, they're fighting at a certain time of day that nobody's really used to. Oh, well, they're not used to rehydrating at this time. Or they're used to getting more hours of rehydration at this time. So what? Because he couldn't rehydrate at a more higher weight and have more of an advantage of a guy who is naturally a featherweight, a guy who has only fought featherweight opponents, higher level featherweight opponents. It's like, come on, what more do you need? What more do you want for a person to have? More of an advantage do you want a person to have over an opponent? This guy literally had everything. Height, check. Weight, check. Strength, probably, check. The history in the weight class, check. It's like, what more did you want? So when you're saying things like that, it just makes it seem like you're making excuses, 100%. You can say you're not. You can clearly say you're not making excuses, but by saying it, you actually are. You actually are making excuses for that. And you can't do that. At the end of the day, the reason why Islam Makhachev did not look as good as he did was because of the simple fact that Alexander Volkanovski was as good as everyone says he is. That's why. That is exactly why. Alexander Volkanovski was pound for pound number one for a reason. And he showed why he is pound for pound number one. And he actually showed why he is still, and probably still in most people's eyes, pound for pound number one. That's just my personal opinion, guys. So that's all my outlooks when it comes to this fight. That's all I got to say regarding this fight. I enjoyed the fight. I know all you guys enjoyed the fight. So definitely let me know what you guys think about everything that I just fed back to you guys. Let me know in the comments, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.